All right, and we are live. Sorry for anyone that has been waiting. We're a little bit late, but I hope that not many of you have been waiting. And we had a few technical issues here, but they've hopefully all been sorted. Can you hear me and see me okay? Sort of 27 minutes later than I was hoping to go live, but it is live, so we deal with these technical issues from time to time. Hey Paul, how's it going? Good to see you here. Thanks for joining. Sorry for coming late today, but great to see you. Just let me know you can hear me okay and that everything seems to be okay my end. Just making sure that it's all good. Just drop a message in the chat that you can hear me and everything's good. But yeah, we'll get to it. So today, if I find my notes, here we go. We're talking about what's the best way to record guitar and vocals at home. And just for anyone that doesn't know me, my name's Fabian, and I am a singer-songwriter, guitarist. I play kind of fingerstyle guitar, and I release albums, and I have been touring, and I will be touring in the future. Currently, I'm not touring as much, but I don't consider myself a producer or anything like this. I've recorded guitar a lot, and I've recorded in studios a lot, and I've been playing for a long, long time. So this is kind of my angle and where I'm coming from, So my kind of opinions and my thoughts might differ from someone from like a producer that's kind of knows what they're talking about. Definitely know what they're talking about more than me. I don't consider myself a producer or anything like this. So take everything that I say with a pinch of salt. Everything is my opinion, and sound is subjective anyway. So what sounds good to me might not sound good to you. So that's why I put a question at the title of this video, because what is the best way to record guitar and vocals at home? I don't know. We'll go through my method, but maybe you have something that you feel is better, and let me know in the chat if you do as well, because I find it just interesting to have, these discussions. So the things that we're going to cover, and because I'm a little late, I don't want to go on too long, because I know it's like coming up to 9:30 now in Berlin time, Central European time. So, I realize that there's a few people that are on the same time as me, and it can get a little late. So I don't want to go on too long, but we're going to kind of cover what I feel are my most important points when I'm recording at home, which is firstly choosing the right room. That's point number one. Number two is microphones and choosing the right microphone. And number four is microphone techniques, positions, and this kind of thing. And number five is preamp and signal chain. And that's kind of talking about what different preamps can do for your microphone, the signal chain, and effects, and using different things. So that's the subject. So the first one, firstly I want to say who this is for, and in my head this is for people that really are singer-songwriters and guitarists, and you want to start recording, or you've been recording for a little while at home, and you want to experiment, or you want to kind of get different ideas and different opinions, because there's a million ways to record yourself, really. And I think the best way is the way that you find the best, what works for you. And to find that out, it's good to get other people's opinion. I find this as well. I'm constantly asking producers how they record guitar and how they would do it. So, it's just interesting to get other people's opinion. And through this, I'll ask you questions because I want to know for my own knowledge how you guys do it and what microphones you use and all this sort of thing. And so, but I do want to say, performance always comes first, in my opinion. I feel like you can have the best equipment in the world. It's not gonna make your performance great if you do a bad performance, I find. And if you have the worst equipment in the world, but you do an amazing performance, I think it doesn't matter as much, I think you can hear past the bad quality, what people might consider bad quality recording in terms of the quality of the microphones, the quality of the preamps on the recording device. People will see through that or hear through that if they feel like, this is just a really great performance and this is just a really great musician and a really great song, That's how I feel. But anyway, it's good to know, it's good to also have a great recording, if you can combine those two things, a great performance and a great song and a great recording. Yeah. So, and we're also talking about recording guitar and voice together. So I won't be talking about recording guitar and voice separately. That's something I don't really do that much. And I feel for my type of music and for a lot of singer-songwriters, I feel that it's not the most natural. It's not the way to get the most natural sound, I find. I've done that before in the past, and I felt like my songs weren't as good. The performance weren't as good because when I play guitar, I almost see my vocal melody is almost like a seventh string to the guitar. It intertwines with everything that I'm playing on the guitar, and if I do things separately, then it's just something's off. I feel, and it just doesn't sound as natural to me. So I always prefer to record guitar and vocals together. So that's what we're talking about. And I just go to the chat. Paul says all fine. Great. Thanks for doing that. Fantastic. You can all hear me. All right. So that's kind of how I feel. And we'll go straight to number one, choosing the right room. And this is an interesting thing, because I feel like a lot of us that are recording, we don't have rooms that are just for recording. I mean, even this room here, it looks like this is a nice studio that I have in my basement, and it kind of is. But if I was to angle these cameras kind of to the other side of the room, you would see a whole load of storage and some mess right now. So it is my family's basement that's I'm using as as my studio as well. So I think a lot of us are kind of using spare rooms. We're using bedrooms, basements, kind of whatever we can find to record in. And I think as long as you find something that is kind of away from background noise, this is what I'd say. Something that you're not going to get too many neighbors walking above you. because a lot of those low frequencies like footsteps and stuff, they really can pick up through the microphones. And, you know, stuff like this, just so I'd say just kind of be aware of that. And that's how I feel, you know, that's how I feel when I'm kind of choosing a room. But obviously a lot of us don't have the luxury of being able to choose a room that's perfect. You know, we have to just deal with whatever room we have. And I think that comes in of making sure the room sounds good. And I feel like there's lots you can do here. And what I've done is I've basically put rugs on the floor. So this floor here is actually concrete. It's just concrete floor, which is also really cold. In the winter, it gets really cold. So I put just rugs, as many different rugs as I possibly can. And some of them are actually overlaying each other. It doesn't look that great, but it's really good acoustically, I'd say. It really helps. So rugs, definitely. Any kind of carpet, anything like that you have on the floor would just completely dampen those reflections you're going to get from it. And on the walls here, you might see some of these acoustic panels. These are really easy to build yourself, you know. I built these, and it's literally just a frame, and then I get some fabric, and I put some fabric inside the frame. Very easy, very cheap. You can even buy these fairly cheap as well. And there's rock wool inside. Rock wool is like a material that's just very dense. You can get rock wool from like builders merchants and stuff like this. And it's just very, very dense material. And they use it for insulation in houses and stuff. Be very careful if you deal with this. There's lots you can find out online about this, because it is hazardous. And make sure when you're working with this, you work outside and you have a mask and stuff, because it's tiny little fabrics, you know, little fibers, that can get in your lungs, and that's not good. So, you know, just be careful with rock wool, and there's lots of information you can find out online and stuff like this. And so do it at your own risk. You know, do your research and everything, but it's a great material acoustically, and that's what I've used here. So it basically just dampens those reflections. You know, we just want to dampen reflections we're getting, and you can just hear, you know, if you go into a room and you play, or if you clap or whatever, make some noise, and you can kind of hear those reflections, and record yourself as well, so you can hear the recording and listen to those reflections. But a lot of this, you know, you can really improvise with whatever you have at home. Curtains with windows is also a big one, because obviously it's anything really hard material like glass or concrete or a wall, you know, it's the frequencies are just going to bounce off that, and it's not going to sound great. You know, you can improvise. Curtains, like I said. I haven't got many windows here because it's a basement, so I don't have to worry about that too much. But let me know, you know, in the comments below, what do you use at home? I'm really interested to hear what everyone uses. If you record at home, yeah, what stuff have you used? Is it similar stuff to this? Have you made your own acoustic panels? Have you used rugs, carpets? You know, I've heard of all kinds of things, like people using sofas. You know, you can get a big sofa, and that's a really good for absorbing the frequencies. And mattresses, people just getting a big old mattress and kind of putting it. It doesn't look very nice, you know. Maybe you want it to kind of be aesthetically pleasing as well. But there's lots we can do very cheaply with that. And I also think, just personally, I don't want necessarily the room to be completely soundproof. I don't think it's about soundproofing a room and making it completely dead, like there's no frequencies at all. Some frequencies, some sort of what I mean by reflections. Some reflections are nice, I like some reflections in a room. I don't want the room to be completely dead, because that's almost lifeless. I find it's almost unnatural, for that. I've been in some studios that just feel it's really, really completely dead room, and for some situations you might want that, remember, take all of this with a pinch of salt. All of this is just my opinion and the way I like things to sound. You might agree with me, you might not. You might want a completely dead room, and you might want that sound. To me, it sounds a little bit, unnatural. I like it. I want someone to be able to hear the room a little bit, but I don't want any harsh frequencies that are just kind of, because then if you really hear that, then it gets a little annoying, if you're getting these frequencies. So that's kind of my opinion on choosing a room. And I'd say also be aware of position as well, where you're going to record in the room. But we can actually get to that later when we talk about the position of the microphone and everything like that. For now, when we're just talking about choosing the right room, making sure the room is pleasing to the ears. There's no sort of harsh frequencies coming back and everything like that. This is what I did with the room that I'm using now, and I actually recorded my latest album in this room as well. So it sounded really nice. It sounded really, really nice. So I'm quite happy with the way this room sounds. Just go to the chat, and Paul says rock wall panels as well. Nice, yeah. And blankets and rugs, yeah, exactly. There's these kind of things. Anything that kind of absorbs, the frequencies will definitely improve it drastically, I find. But yeah, great. So once you've found your room and you've treated it acoustically and it's sounding good, then you can start thinking about microphones. And this is something that you can go down a rabbit hole, a very long rabbit hole, looking at. So I don't want to go too deep in it, but basically there's three main types of microphones: dynamic, condenser, and ribbon. And I don't want to talk about each one exactly how they work, but dynamics are used a lot for live. So that the typical one is a SM58 or an SM57 is the Shure dynamic microphone, one of the most famous dynamic microphones. And there's also some loads of other great dynamic microphones, but it wouldn't be necessarily, a dynamic wouldn't be my go-to for recording in a studio, or at home rather. But having said that, I haven't tried all dynamic microphones, and there's some really, really nice ones that actually sound really good when you're recording at home. So that's just something that I haven't had too much experience in diving in with, using just dynamic microphones. But lots of people just use SM57 to record, and it sounds great. And I think lots of people have done that, have recorded with SM57s. I should imagine, because it's a very, very famous microphone. Maybe that's something to find out and have for another live stream. Which albums have used SM57s? And they're very affordable. You know, that's the other good thing about Dynamics, is they're very affordable microphones. But it's very hard to get that kind of top end detail, I find, with Dynamics. I still think it is possible, but I think it's a lot harder to get that sound, the same kind of sound that you can get with condensers or ribbon microphones. And so condensers and ribbons, they have, well, look at condensers first, is, to me, have a lot more detail in the sound. Like this one here, right here. This is a condenser microphone, a small diaphragm condenser. And then you get big diaphragm or large diaphragm condensers, which you can use for, a lot of people use for vocals as well. And they have a lot more detail in the sound. As well as ribbons. Ribbons also have a lot of detail. This microphone I'm using right now for my vocals is a ribbon microphone. And you can really hear all the detail when I talk. You can hear all those frequencies, both in the low range of my voice and all those kind of top end detailed higher range frequencies as well. So ribbons and condensers, I would say, have a bit more of a detailed sound. So that's a very simplified, broad explanation on those three main different types of microphones. So the question is which ones to use, and and how many to use as well. So I'll say what I use, and then maybe if anyone wants to share in the chat, you can say which microphones you use, whether you use one or whether you use any more, anything like this. This will be interesting to find out. So remember, we're talking about recording guitar and vocals at the same time. So which microphones you use. So I use typically is actually these two here right now. Is one of my setups. Is the KM184, and I would use either a ribbon microphone for my vocals, or maybe a large diaphragm condenser for my vocals, like the AKG C414. I used that for one of my albums. I think it was for the first one and possibly the second one, but they were done in the studio, so not at home. But these large diaphragm condensers I have used, definitely. But I really like to use these ribbon microphones, and that's something that's come up recently. So this is what I choose when I choose to record guitar and vocals at the same time. And I also like to just use one microphone as well. I find using just one microphone has a bit more of a natural sound to it, I find, because everything is coming from the one source, and you can almost kind of hear that as well. It has a very particular sound that I just really like, especially if it's a ribbon microphone picking up. There's something just really nice and natural sounding about a ribbon microphone, especially if you're just using one to pick up everything. It's something that's I personally really like the sound of. So that's what I like to use. And when you're choosing a microphone, I think it's important as well to think about the polar pattern as well, you know, because it's something that that maybe you don't think about a lot. So a polar pattern is basically how the microphone picks up the sound, and this one here, the KM184, picks up the sound kind of around this area and doesn't really pick up any behind it. It's a very kind of focused sound, you know. Let's see if I can pop up an image of this. It's called a cardioid condenser. Let's see if I can get this. Got an image of a cardioid. See if I can do this. Hold on, bear with me. And just need to move a few things around. Here we go, see if this works. Oh, doink. Yep. So that is a cardioid. So the microphone would kind of be here, if that makes sense, pointing this way. And this is the area that it picks up, basically, if that makes sense. So it doesn't pick up any sound behind it, directly behind it, which is very useful when you have lots of other instruments playing in the same room, or like for this example, that you have the vocals and the guitar. Maybe you want to keep very separate. I mean, even though that you wouldn't be singing behind it necessarily, but you know, it's just a small diaphragm condenser. Cardioid polar pattern is a very focused sound, and we'll look at that as well. We'll look how I'll do an example, and we'll look how much of the guitar comes in and how much of my voice comes in to the microphone. And I'll see if I can get up, hold on, bear with me a second, this one here. Now this is a ribbon microphone, and it's literally just has a ribbon inside. So it's we call it a figure of 8 polar pattern. So it literally picks up in front of it and directly behind it. So it's kind of both equal, and that can be a good thing, or can be a bad thing, depending on your situation, you know. So it's worth kind of thinking about these things and thinking about how this may affect your particular, you know, your setup and the way you do things. So that's the figure of 8. So that's the polar pattern there. So the microphone is obviously in the middle, and that's in front of it, and that's behind it. So I hope that makes sense. So that kind of gives you a bit of an idea about polar patterns, and there's various other ones, and it's just something to kind of think about a little bit. We'll go to the chat now, see what people say. All right, Paul said some stuff. Who's that? Sufan Stevens and Bon Iver made their debut albums with only SM57s. Yeah, that's true. That's really cool. I should make a note of that. I should look at that. Yeah, I'm sure there's loads of others as well that have made albums with just the SM57s. I should look at that. I should get some. I don't actually have any SM57s. I should try and get some and try and do some examples, maybe test it compared to other microphones and see how they sound. Who's that? CW Stone King made his first album with one ribbon mic. You would love this guy, I think. Okay. All right. CW Stone King. I haven't heard of him. CW Stone King. Okay. you know what? I'm just going to make a quick note right now. CW Stone King, because I know I'll just forget as soon as this live stream's over. I just completely forget it. CW Stone King. Okay. Thanks for that. I'll check him out. Absolutely. And I'll do some research and I'll see some other albums were made with just the SM57. I'm sure there's loads. Yeah, you can definitely get a great sound out of an SM57, absolutely. So that's kind of microphones and looking at the different types of microphones. Obviously, I'm kind of jumping over things here and not going too deep into things, but I just want to kind of go over how I do things. And like I said before, I don't consider myself a producer of any kind. I haven't been trained in production. I'm just really interested in it, and I love learning about it. And I've been playing for a long, long time, and I've been recording for a long, long time. And I think I've developed maybe a good ear for it. I hope so, at least. And I've developed kind of my own, I know what I like kind of thing, if that makes sense. And it's sound, it's all subjective, isn't it? So talking about microphones, and then we looked at the different types of microphones and the polar pattern. And the next thing is microphone techniques. And so this is where I feel everything kind of comes together with the room and the microphone and the polar pattern. And the other thing you need to consider is the positioning. And this is something that I'm constantly trying to experiment with and trying different things. So what we might do is I might get my guitar now and I'll do just a little demonstration. I just got to make sure I'm in tune. That would be good. I'll make sure I'm in tune, don't I? And we'll kind of look at how my kind of process of recording. So, I'll just grab a little bit of water. Sorry, excuse me. So at the moment, this is very rough. The setup is the Neumann KM184 cardioid condenser, small diaphragm condenser. And I have it roughly kind of set up around the 12th fret. So this is the 12th fret on my guitar. And I usually have it around, I like to start around 20 centimeters. So I actually have my ruler here. Let's make sure that's correct. Roughly speaking, that's roughly 20 centimeters. You'll have to do your own conversion if you want that in inches and stuff. I don't do inches, just centimeters. Right, yeah. And I like to have it pointing, so the level of it is around the same level as the fret, and kind of in the middle of the fret, in terms of the middle of the fretboard, in terms of like about here, at the 12th fret, but slightly. What I'm experimenting with is having it pointing slightly towards the sound hole. And that kind of gives me, so basically with guitar, I should go back a bit. The more something is pointed towards the sound hole, then the bassier it's going to get. The more low end you're going to get, and the more you kind of go towards the fretboard, the more higher end frequencies you're going to get, and more of like your fingers and the strings. It's obvious, right? So kind of in the middle is a kind of a good way between. So the 12th fret is kind of in the middle of the nut and the bridge, basically. But yeah, I like to have a slight angle on that. And what I might do, I'm just going to go and I'm going to turn on the Neumann now. And I'm going to turn this mic off just so you can kind of get a bit of an idea. And I'll just play the guitar for a little bit, and just so it gives you a bit of an idea about what kind of sound I'm trying to get. So if you notice there, I was actually moving the guitar a little bit slightly forward and back. And that's so I could kind of adjust and get a good position, basically, on what I wanted. I'm just going to move my... I got a little footstool here that I'm just... 1 second, sorry. Yeah, so I was moving around. Obviously you can hear that. If you're listening on headphones, then you can definitely hear that. If you're listening on a phone speakers, then you might not be able to notice any difference, but basically it really gets a lot bassy here, you know. And this is kind of the sound, and this is kind of what I like to do a little bit, is just kind of experiment and move it around and have a listen in real time, and kind of get a good sound. That I'm happy with, you know. And then what I might do is I might record a little bit and then listen back, and then adjust accordingly, you know, because and I might do that, you know, a number of times. Obviously I'm not going to do that right now, but because it's very time consuming, but that's what I like to do. So to kind of get the right sound that I'm looking for, you know. And I want something that's because I feel like I know the sound of my guitar. And this is if you don't know, this is a Loudon 010 jumbo guitar, and cedar top and mahogany back and sides, and it's a really big sounding guitar, and it has a lot of low end, and I kind of want a lot of richness, and I kind of want that to come through in the recording, you know. So I'm definitely looking for it to a lot of that low end, but I also want a lot of the high, the nice crispy high airy detail as well, you know. I'm definitely looking for that as well. So it's a kind of a mixture between the two, and trying to get that nice blend between the two. Obviously it depends on what I'm playing, whether I'm playing something really kind of slow and of long notes, or whether I'm playing something kind of faster that maybe doesn't need these doesn't need it to be too kind of rich and low endy. So it depends on what song I'm playing and what sound I'm trying to get out of that guitar for that particular recording. Because it can change drastically just on the tiniest movement. So I like to really spend as much time as I can getting the right sound and the right position. Having said that, when you're in the moment and when you're playing, you're going to move around. It's going to happen. And I feel like I move around a lot when I play. I try not to. But I just can't help it, and I know that, and I realize that. So at the same time, trying to get the best sound that I can when I record, I know sometimes I'm just going to move around, and it doesn't matter anyway. But like I said at the beginning, the performance always trumps the quality of the recording. So, and in a way, the performance is a great performance, and a great song does make a great quality recording in a way. It's a huge aspect of that anyway. So I always feel when I listen back to takes in previous albums and stuff, I've always gone for the better performance than the better sounding recording, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Because I feel like if something is really hitting me, like that was a really great moment, I like that, I want to go for that take because I feel like that was a really great performance over something that might sound better, but it just wasn't as good, so that's kind of my take on that as well. So that's with the KM184, and that's kind of how I like to set that up. And with the microphone, so I'm going to explain now how I set up the ribbon mic. And I find I really like ribbon mics because they have a very natural sound to them. It's very hard to explain. To me, it's just, and for my voice, I find I just really like the sounds of them. And I have this thing of I pronounce certain words very. I use a lot of, I don't know the word for it. I'm sure there's a word for it, but the S's and the these sort of, especially S's, and there's lots of s, these sort of sounds. I pronounce them really harshly for some reason, and I don't mean to. It's just the way I do it. And so, with certain microphones that have a kind of a point where each microphone kind of has. How do I explain this? Is able to receive frequencies differently, has a different sound, right? And ribbon microphones, the high ends, they don't tend not to be as harsh, whereas other microphones, they have a bit more harsher high end, and I know that's not a technical way of explaining that. That's a really dumb way of explaining that, maybe, but it's just all I can do at the moment. Sorry. Forgive me. A little tired, but we'll keep going. We'll move on. Hope that makes sense. So it's so that's why I like ribbon mics. They have this kind of particular, they have this nice kind of low end soothing sound that I really like. And a little story on on microphones and voices, I actually tried this really expensive mic, this AKG. It was like a vintage AKG, something like this. It was like a 20 grand mic or something, you know. It was a really like very, very high-end vintage quality AKG mic. And it just sounded so bad on my voice. It was really harsh, and you know, it just didn't sound very good. So my point is, try and experiment with different mics, because we all have very different voices. I think even more so than guitars, you know. So it's worth definitely experimenting with different microphones and finding a microphone that suits your voice. Is my point. That's my point I'm trying to make. So now let's have a listen to how I would set up the microphone. Obviously, I would have some kind of pop shield on this if I was really doing a proper recording, but I just don't at the moment. I've kind of got it over to the side, but this is just a rough idea and kind of giving you a bit of an insight to my process on how I record. So let's turn that off, and so we can hear really how the microphone sounds. And obviously I'm going to be very aware not to speak into the microphone too much directly, so I'm going to kind of sing this way and not that way, because also ribbon mics are very sensitive to wind. So hopefully that will be okay, but usually I would have some kind of pop shield on this, but we'll just see how it sounds. Nobody's fault but mine, and nobody's fault but mine. If I don't read, my soul be lost. And I have a Bible in my home, and I have a Bible in my home. If I don't read, my soul be lost. Mother, she taught me how to read. Mother, she taught me how to read. If I don't read, my soul be lost. Nobody's fault but mine. So that gives you an idea about how that sounds. And I really like ribbons also because they're very forgiving microphones. You know, I can kind of sway a little bit, and I'm always trying to think about the performance and what I'm doing in the performance, you know. And I think it's something that maybe people don't think about enough, or don't think about too much, you know, is how you react to the performance, and maybe which microphone suits that the best, or which setup suits that the best. You know, that's why I really like recording with just one microphone, because it's just very easy and simple, and it's non-intrusive to the performance, you know. When you have like loads of microphones and boom stands and all this going on, it can be very intrusive, intrusive. You know what I mean? That word. Intrusive. That's it. I got it right. Intrusive to the performance, you know. And yeah, anything that's gonna help the performer, I think, is a win. So I can kind of move around a little bit, and it doesn't drop out in volume too much, you know. I find that is really good with the ribbon mics. Yeah, and also when you heard, you know, there's not too much. So this microphone is not on at the moment. So what you're hearing of the guitar is just with this microphone, so you're going to get some bleed of, so you're going to hear the guitar coming through on the vocal microphone, and vice versa. You're going to hear the vocal come through on the guitar microphone. And let's just turn, so I'll turn this one off now, turn the ribbon one off, and I'll turn on the Neumann, and we'll hear how much vocals is coming through there.
Nobody's fault but mine. Nobody's fault but mine. If I don't read, my soul be lost.
So not too much. I find this does a really good job of rejecting other noise around it, and just it focuses on what's directly in front of it. That's why I use this a lot live on stage as well. It's a really good one. So that gives you an idea. So also, I should mention one thing that I didn't talk about too much is the position of the microphones, but also the position of you, the performer, in the room, and make sure you don't have too many harsh kind of objects around, and this is something to be aware, because it doesn't matter too much with this one here, because as we looked at the polar pattern earlier, it doesn't pick up anything behind it, and it's good at rejecting other sounds. But with something like a ribbon microphone or a large diaphragm condenser, it's going to pick up a lot more of the surrounding area, especially a ribbon mic, because it picks up exactly, it's a figure of 8 pattern, so it's going to pick up exactly the same behind it than it does in front of it as well. So if you have like a window directly behind you or something, then you're going to get some weird frequencies coming off that, and it might not sound as good. I wouldn't, because of this live stream right now, obviously I wouldn't be, I'm kind of towards one end of the room. If I was recording this properly, I would be position myself more towards the middle of the room, and try not to have any stuff too close to me, around me. But yeah, I thought I'd just mention that and just be aware of the polar pattern in that case, and any kind of frequencies that could sound a bit strange and cause any problems. But yeah, so that's kind of the basics of how I would record vocals and guitar with 2 microphones. I want to show you now what I would do with just 1 microphone, and then we'll look after that. Then we're going to look at preamp and signal chain a little bit, and then maybe I'll finish with the song, and then I'll probably end it, because it's 10:20 here in Berlin, so it's getting a little late. But what I'll do is I'll just turn this off now, and I'll position this a little bit, this microphone, to how I would do if I was just recording with 1 mic. Move this one a little bit. Here we go. All right, so obviously this is very rough, and just because I'm doing this as a live stream, which seems to be working okay, but I won't be. I would take a lot more time if I was doing this, for real, not as a live stream. So basically, I would get it in some kind of position. I might step back a little bit, maybe. And the reason I would wear headphones is because I need to listen to how this sounds as I'm playing it and adjust. So that's similar to what I was doing with the Neumann here. I'm just adjusting. I'm just playing, and I would sing, and I'd listen, and I would adjust. And with one microphone, it's all about kind of getting the right balance between the vocals and the guitar. What I find really cool, really good, is using one of these. It's a footstool, and you can just, and it's a great way of lifting up your guitar, because if I wasn't using my footstool, my guitar would be down here. Which sounds okay, but then if I bring it up a bit more, definitely has a lot more volume. So that's a really useful thing to have, to just bring the guitar up and it's closer to your mouth. So it's kind of a balance. It's never gonna sound as quite as, I don't want to say it's good. It's never going to sound like you have... It's not going to be the same sound as having a dedicated microphone for your voice and a dedicated microphone for your guitar, It's just a different sound. And obviously, like I said, I would spend a lot more time experimenting and adjusting, trying... adjusting. So I'm going to try it now, and I might do a few adjustments just to kind of go through the process and give you an idea about what that looks like.
Nobody's fault but mine, and nobody's fault but mine. If I don't read, my soul be lost. Nobody's fault but mine, and nobody's fault but mine. If I don't read, my soul be lost. Nobody's fault but mine.
So it sounds pretty good in terms of the balance and the levels. I might even have it lift it up a little bit, just a tiny bit, and see how that sounds.
Nobody's fault but mine, and nobody's fault but mine. If I don't read, my soul be lost. My mother, she taught me how to read. My mother, she taught me how to read. If I don't read, my soul be lost. Nobody's fault but mine.
So I'm quite happy with that, but obviously I would spend a lot more time adjusting, trying, listening, adjusting, and I think it's worth spending the time doing this. I'm just going to put it back now. 1 second. It's worth spending the time. Oh, that's really loud. It's worth spending the time doing this, because I feel like if you get a good sound, try and get the sound that you want before you hit record. And this is what I always try and say to myself. Try and get the sound that I want before I hit record, because if I can get as close to that as possible, then I don't have to do as much in the post, in the DAW, after the recording. And a lot of the time I don't, I do like tiny bits of EQ, maybe tiny bits of compression, and that's it really. It's depending on what it is, but most of the time, sometimes I don't even touch it, and I just put it on. But if it's a proper release, obviously I will go through and really make sure it's the best that it can be. But still, most of the time, it'll be very minimal stuff. Like the last album that I released had no edits in, not one edit. All we did was maybe a tiny bit of EQing. We added the reverb after, a little bit of reverb. We did record things separately, so there were separate microphones for everything. And then obviously the mastering process as well. But that's just making sure, getting everything kind of at the same level kind of thing. But there was no kind of edits. Every track was from beginning to end, straight through. No cuts whatsoever and no edits. So, and that's because we spent so much time beforehand getting the right sound, And I really believe that. I really believe that if you spend time doing this, going through the process, then you get as close to the sound that you want, then you don't have to do much after the recording. Yeah. Going to the chat now. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. What is it? Sibilance. That's it. Sibilance. Thanks for that word. Great. Fantastic. So I just want to talk about one more thing. So preamp and signal chains. I realize I haven't really asked many questions. I've kind of been blabbering and talking about my own stuff, but my point of this is just to maybe give you an idea, give you an insight to kind of my process and how I do things. That's why I said, what's the best way to record acoustic guitar and vocals? Because there's no best way to do it. It's all just this is the best way for me, I find, and you need to find the best way for you. But some of you may have been recording already for years. Maybe you're more experienced than me, and this is, I'm not saying I'm a master at this at all whatsoever. I just really enjoy it, and I really enjoy learning and discovering new ways to get to record the guitar and vocals. So I want to talk a little bit about preamp and signal chain, and I just use the preamp I use is like an old, what is it called? I have to look now. Symmetrics preamp. It's not an amazing preamp, to be honest. I'd love to get some nicer preamps, but I feel like you don't necessarily need the best Neve preamp, that would be lovely. But especially if you're just starting out, just get whatever you can afford, and then you can always upgrade later. But this one is quite, it's fairly nice, and it gives me enough gain for this ribbon mic. Because I find like the ribbon mics, they need quite a bit of gain. So some mics will need more gain than others, and depending on the microphone, and the Neumann doesn't need too much, because it's with condensers, they require 48 volts of phantom power, and that kind of gives it a boost. So they don't need as much gain. But I want to say with the ribbons, I use these. They're like mic boosters. There's various different ones. The one I'm using at the moment is the Triton Audio Fethead. It's a really good one. This is another one, Clark Technic one. It's also good, but not as good as the other one. And these, you basically put these in the signal chain. So this microphone would plug into this, and then this would go into the preamp, and it gives it like 20 dB of boost. It's really good. If you haven't got a really high-end preamp that can give you enough gain, then you can use them, and you can use them on dynamic microphones as well. That also sometimes need a lot of boost, a lot of gain. So that's something I like to use a lot, But yeah. So the preamp can basically enhance the signal quality from the microphone. And it can, in essence, that's what it does. It's the microphone's signal is so tiny and so small that it needs a big boost to actually get it to a level where you can use it, you can record, and that's what the preamp does basically. That's its job. And some really high-end, some nice microphones will give a sort of a flavor of their sound to the microphone, and give a really nice sound, like Neve microphones are really, really nice. Neve preamps, sorry. But you can, I'm just thinking about the signal chain, and so let me know in the comments whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on the replay. What's your signal chain? What do you record into? Do you record into a audio interface? Do you record into an external recorder? I like to use external recorders. I did a video on this, few videos on this, a Zoom H4n Pro, sorry. It's a really, really great, handy recorder. I like to use external recorders. I tend not to record into the computer directly. And that's, again, just a personal thing. That's just what I prefer to use, these recorders. And these microphones are actually really, really good. I did a video on this if you haven't seen it, but of me just using these microphones. But these are things to think about if you're thinking about recording and you haven't yet. What are you going to use to record as well? You don't have to record into the computer. You don't have to use a computer at all. You can record. Takes an SD card. Is there one in there? Yeah, there's one in there. SD card, records directly onto that, and then you can actually get an SD card reader, and then you can plug that into your phone. I mean, your phone's a computer technically, but you know what I mean. You don't have to use a desktop or a laptop to record directly into, if you don't want to. But I like to record onto this or onto something else, and these external recorders, and then I move it onto the computer and edit in a DAW. And I don't want to talk about editing too much after recording, because I feel I'm not really into that too much. If I'm honest, I find it a bit, it's not boring, but you know, it's not as exciting as talking about, I don't find it as exciting as this process, recording with the microphones and the setting up and getting the right sound before you hit record. This is basically, this is what I'm all about. I love getting that sound before you hit record. And one thing I tend to do, just on the last point, as we're landing the plane here, is sometimes I actually like to go into a external effects unit, so, and actually have reverb before I go into the recorder, which is, I know sounds crazy, because you can easily just record without reverb and then add reverb later. I know that. But sometimes, you know, I like to get the sound that I'm looking for before I hit record and as I'm playing, you know, and I like to listen back to it, and that can enhance the performance, because it can give me it can inspire me as I'm playing and give me that sound, you know. At the moment, I'm not using reverb or anything. These are just going into the mixer I'm using here and then straight into the computer. This is not how I would exactly record a recording, but a song, but this is just for demonstration purposes and show you how I set things up. But that's one thing that possibly that I do, you know. You might think that's ridiculous. Maybe. That's okay, you know. It's all subjective. It's all subjective, you know. But I don't do that all the time. But there's no rules with this, you know, I find, and I'm still learning, and it's a really interesting subject that I just wanted to do a live stream on, and I'm happy that I got to share my process with you all. So let's end the plane now, and I'll just do a song, and here we go. I'll do the song that I've been playing, Nobody's Fault But Mine. I might not do the whole song because it's getting late now, and it's like 10:39 now in Berlin, and I don't want to go on too long. And so this is Nobody's Fault But Mine. Let's make sure that the sound is still...
Nobody's fault but mine, and nobody's fault but mine. If I don't read, my soul be lost. Mother, she taught me how to read. Mother, she taught me how to read. If I don't read, my soul be lost. Sister, she taught me how to read. Sister, she taught me how to read. If I don't read, my soul be lost. Nobody's fault but mine. Father, he taught me how to read. Father, he taught me how to read. If I don't read, my soul be lost. Nobody's fault but mine. And I have a Bible in my home. And I have a Bible in my home. If I don't read, my soul be lost. Nobody's fault but mine.
That was Nobody's Fault But Mine by Blind Willie Johnson. Thank you so much for watching. I've been talking about what the best way to record guitar and vocals at home and kind of my method. And basically to conclude is just experiment, come up with your own ways. Come up with your own methods of experimenting and trying different things, and you know, it's all subjective at the end of the day. Thank you, Paul, for joining, and your lovely comments. I'll check out that CW, what is it, CW Stone King. I'll check him out. Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a lovely one. And yeah, thanks a lot, Paul. See you next week. Have a lovely evening. Have a lovely weekend. And see you next time. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.